Thought Reflection 0428-26, The Ego. There is a common idea that the ego is something separate, something that must be overcome or eliminated in order to reach a higher state of awareness. But when you look closely at your own experience, the ego does not show up as an enemy. It shows up as movement, subtle, persistent, and often unnoticed. It is the part of you that reacts, that seeks comfort, control, recognition, and identity. It is not loud most of the time. In fact, its quietness is what makes it so easy to slip into. You can be present one moment, aware and grounded, and then without any clear break, you find yourself caught in thought, reaction, or emotion. There is no dramatic shift, no obvious takeover. It is more like a drift. You forget that you were aware, and in that forgetting, the ego resumes its role as the default way of operating. This is why it can feel like something is taking over, when in reality, nothing new has entered the system. You have simply moved into a different mode of it. This is an important realization, because it changes the approach entirely. If the ego is not separate, then it is not something to fight. It is something to understand. It is a natural part of the human experience, and in many ways it serves a purpose. It generates impulses. It pushes you toward action. It responds to the world quickly, often without needing to think. The problem is not that the ego exists. The problem is when it operates without awareness. At some point, the ego becomes the default operating system. It is the baseline from which most decisions, reactions, and interpretations are made. This likely develops over time, as awareness becomes more fragmented, and identification with thought becomes stronger. The result is a life that feels reactive rather than intentional, where actions are driven more by impulse than by alignment. But awareness changes that. When awareness comes online, even briefly, you begin to see the ego in motion. You notice the impulse before you act on it. You see the reaction forming. You feel the pull towards something that may not fully align with your deeper values. In that moment, a space opens. And in that space, there is a choice. This is where alignment begins, not in perfection, but in recognition. You will still feel the impulses. You will still react at times. You will still miss the mark. But now, you can see it. And once you see it, you can begin to weigh it. Weighing the ego is not about suppressing it or denying it. It is about bringing it into balance with your values. Every impulse can be placed against the question, does this move me closer to alignment or further from it? The answer is not always obvious, and it will not be the same for everyone. Each person has a different history, a different environment, and a different set of challenges. Because of this, each person must find their own balance point. This is why there is no single path that works for everyone. The structure may be shared, but the expression is unique. What brings one person into alignment may not look the same for another, but the process is the same. Impulse arises, awareness notices, and a choice is made. And that choice will not always be the right one. There will be moments when the ego leads, when you act out of habit, comfort, or reaction. These moments are not failures, they are part of the process. What matters is not that you avoid them entirely, but that you recognize them when they happen. The recognition itself is a form of alignment. From there, you return. This is the pattern that repeats. You act, you notice, you adjust. You get pulled, you become aware, you come back. Over time, this cycle begins to refine itself. You notice sooner, you return faster. The distance between misalignment and awareness becomes smaller, and with that your experience becomes more coherent. Alignment, then, is not a fixed state. It is a moving balance. It is something you practice, not something you achieve once and hold forever. The ego does not disappear, but your relationship to it changes. It no longer runs the system unchecked. It becomes part of a larger process, one that includes awareness, intention, and choice. In this way, the ego becomes less of a problem and more of a tool. It provides the raw material, the impulses, the reactions, the energy. Awareness provides the context, and alignment is found in how those elements are brought together. You do not transcend the ego by escaping it. You work with it, moment by moment, until it no longer pulls you unconsciously. And in that process, something shifts. Not all at once and not perfectly, but gradually. The system becomes more organized, more coherent, more aligned with the direction you have chosen. And that is enough. In the end, the ego itself is not something to remove, defeat, or transcend in the way it is often described. It remains part of the system, part of the human experience. What changes is not its existence, but your relationship to it. Where it once operated unconsciously, it now becomes visible. Where it once dictated direction, it now becomes something you can weigh, something you can work with. The ego does not disappear. It becomes integrated. And in that integration, it no longer distorts the path in the same way. It becomes part of the movement toward alignment rather than something that pulls you away from it. The impulses still arise, the reactions still form, but they are no longer absolute. They are seen, understood, and placed within a larger awareness. This is what allows the process to continue without conflict. You are no longer at war with yourself. You are organizing yourself. And from that place, the path becomes clearer, not because the ego is gone, but because it is no longer in control.